And now we're going to take a look at Kevin Costner's brand new movie. Kevin Costner has returned back to directing for the first time in 20 years, and of course is also starring in this brand new movie called Horizon, an American Saga Chapter 1. Now, we say Chapter 1 because Chapter 2 is out next month, and then there is rumors that number 3 and number 4 are going to come out after that as well. But this is an absolutely epic Western tale. It is set in the 1800s and centers, well, there's several stories, but they kind of all center around this township of Horizon that got off to an absolutely horrific start when the Kittredge family, with Frances, played by Sienna Miller, and the rest of the family start to work on this town called Horizon. Now, before this attack, previously, the surveyors of Horizon had been killed by Apache Indians. Now, with the arrival of various families, including the Kittredge family, the township started to flourish, but shortly afterwards, there was another Apache attack. Now, that brings Trent Geffart, who is a captain in the American Army, played by Sam Worthington, who comes down, and he's kind of critical that they even tried to build a township in Apache territory. So there's a bit of a rocky relationship there. Now, at the same time, we also see some other stories as well. We're introduced to Hayes Ellison, played by Kevin Costner, who is a bit of a wanderer with his men. He comes across a town and ends up meeting a young prostitute played by Aussie Abby Lee, who soon finds herself being chased by these guys that are after a child that she is looking after. And then there's also a third story as well, about a man played by Luke Wilson, who is taking a group of settlers out into the West. Now, at the end of Chapter 1, we don't actually see how these stories are linked. However, we kind of get the feeling that they're all heading towards Horizon, this township that's trying to set itself back up again. So, like I said, this is a huge epic. It's going to be told in 4, and I read before online, possibly 5 chapters. So it's not surprising that Chapter 1 doesn't really complete the story in the same way that the first Lord of the Rings film didn't complete the story either. But Lee, this is Chapter 1 of an epic. What did you think of Chapter 1 of Horizon?
Well, let me just say that I am a binge watcher of pay TV series, and I guess this is what it felt like. The excitement of watching part 1, sitting down for a few hours and binge watching, it felt like episodes of a TV series, and I really enjoyed that. I did not feel like it was too long. I was just excited to be able to watch so much in a film in one go. I thought that I was really captivated by the story of the family who was fighting for their life, and at the very beginning of the movie, and following that family. And there are some really horrific scenes of killings, and I guess you're trying to understand the Native Americans who already live on the land, and the settlers' points of views as well. And mixed in with all of that, of course, is senseless killings. There's very little conversation to reach any agreements, or to understand each other's point of view, or to build any relationship. And of course, there'll be historical reasons why.
Yeah, I thought that was actually the interesting part, because, of course, a lot of Westerns that I grew up watching just depicted the Native Americans as the bad guys. But I actually liked in this one that it showed both sides, and I remember one of the Apaches says, well, they didn't come and ask. When another Apache says to him, well, why did you attack them? He says, well, they didn't come and ask. And you kind of got the feeling that if they'd gone to him and said, can we build a settlement here, they may have been more open to them doing it. Yeah. But then we also saw the split between the Apaches as well, where some disagreed with it.
Yeah, so within a tribe you see them split because of, I guess, one man's, he wants revenge on settlers being on the land and wants to get rid of them, while the other could live harmoniously with the people.
Yeah.
And so, there's all different points of view within it, which just really makes you think. And obviously, historically, you're learning a little bit about the period of that time as well. So I think, it obviously makes you really think. But then the story does go on and you learn more and more about different characters. Now, there were some characters where I would like to have seen more of their backstory. In particular, Marigold, who is the prostitute. She kind of becomes a big character all of a sudden, I guess, without having the backstory. However, in saying that, you can't really judge at the moment that there won't be more story later, because this is only part one, and often in movies or series there's flashbacks later on to show you someone's background, and there's also there might be the character telling their story at some stage to another character. So so I think there's a lot to still learn, and I think it was fascinating. Like, the characters within this story are really fascinating, and I'm excited to see more of their stories emerge over time. There's a lot of questions still to be answered, but also I'm very invested in the characters already, and I want to learn more, and I want to see how this settlement transitions and changes and other challenges that they're going to face. I loved how at the end of this part one, it was almost a wrapping up, but also a film clip of what's to come, I guess.
Yeah, they showed the trailer of the...
It was the trailer, but it was done in such a way that, like, within the actual movie that... I really enjoyed the way that they wrapped that up, because you know there's more to come and you're excited, and so I really wanted to go out, have a drink, get some snacks and come back in and wait for the next part, but of course we've got to wait for
another month.
But the scenery looks stunning, the cinematography is amazing. Of course they're working with live horses and those sorts of things, so beautiful cattle.
I don't get that there's any CGI in this at all. Like, even the battles, I think, are pretty much all done.
Yeah, I think it's all done. And it has a little bit of a feeling of, if anyone's seen 1883, which is connected to the Yellowstone kind of series, it has that kind of feel to it, with, of course, settlers having the horses bring coaches and people, and relationship dynamics within those settlements of people not knowing each other, people from different backgrounds coming together, some rich, some poorer, some hardworking, some used to having servants and now having to pitch in and help. What's appropriate in a community, what's not appropriate in, behavioural wise. You've got all of those. And mixed amongst that is the awe of all the costumes and the landscape and the design of the coaches and the beautiful horses being there and all those sorts of things.
I love also how this is one of those productions where, there are a lot of characters, but you never feel like you lose where any of the characters are. It does remind me a lot of Meek's Cutoff, which is a movie that I loved, that must have been nearly 20 years ago now as well. with Michelle Williams, which was another one about settlers going out to the frontier. The storyline around Hayes arriving in town, though, that also reminded me a lot of the Australian television series The Man from Snowy River, the television series, which for people listening overseas was called the McGregor Saga. Overseas, it just had that kind of feel, and his character reminded me of the McGregor dad in that as well. But yeah, look, this really drew me in. I was a little bit worried when I heard that this one was nearly 3 hours long and there's another 4 movies to come. But it really, really did draw me in. There's really strong performances from Sienna Miller, who is playing a character that we've never seen her play before. Sam Worthington's character kind of grows on you. At the start, I kind of didn't like him because of his attitude towards the townspeople, but then
I understood that.
Yeah.
I thought he had the right attitude in some ways.
Yeah, there's some amazing actors as well. Owen Crowe-Shaw plays Pionsene, which is one of the Apaches. He is really, really good. This is one of those movies, though, where big name actors pop up in small parts. So you've got like Giovanni Ribisi pops up in a part. Abby Lee, the Aussie, she's brilliant as Marigold. And then you've got people like Michael Rooker, Will Patton just pops up. The other person I really want to pay credit to is Georgia McPhail. She plays Elizabeth Kettridge, the daughter. She has some very adult-heavy storylines in this film, including when her mum falls apart and can't ID the bodies of her dad and her brother. Georgia McPhail does brilliantly well. I was reading before that people are calling this her breakout role, and you can tell she's going to be a star off the back of this. Someone else who is going to be a star that I kind of had a little bit of a laugh about was Hayes Costner appears in this as a teenager, and I was reading that Kevin Costner's always been one of those dads that's never wanted to force his kids into acting, but his son is following in his dad's footsteps by his own choice. So he got a small role in this, and I thought he was really, really good in this. So we might see another Costner with his name in lights very, very soon.
The other actor that I thought did an amazing job was Jamie Campbell-Bower, who plays Caleb.
An absolute psycho.
Yeah, but yeah, really strong in his performance there, and yeah, that character is really interesting. So if you see this, watch out for him. I thought there was some mystery too within this film in terms of the character of Hayes, because
we don't know a lot about him.
We don't know a lot about him yet, and interestingly enough, he takes on the responsibility of a woman and a child. I won't go too much into that, but I was wondering, why would he do that? Why did he take this responsibility all of a sudden, very quickly? And I'm sure that we will find out more about that as the saga continues.
I've got a theory, and this is not a spoiler because it's not in the film, but I've got a theory that he's lost his family.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the frontier somehow. The other person too I wanted to pay credit to was Luke Wilson, who again is playing against type. He's kind of playing this guy that got voted in as a leader of a caravan of settlers, and he's having some issues. Let's just say that he's got a couple of psychopaths in his group, and he's also got a rich couple that don't want to help and are treating people like crap. So that's an interesting storyline as well, and I'm sure we'll see more of Luke Wilson. But I love when actors play against type, so I love seeing Luke Wilson and Sienna Miller play characters that we've never seen them play before. Of course, Sienna Miller, we normally see her as the gangster's wife or something like that in a movie, or playing up how gorgeously beautiful she is, like in a role or something like that. But so to see her play a role out in the West where she's dirtied up and stuff like that, it's very much against type for her. So I'm very, very invested to see where this series goes. But Lee, what would you give Chapter 1 out of 5, and why?
I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5. Look, as I said, there are some questions still to be answered, but I'm trusting that those questions will be answered in following episodes. So, if they weren't answered, I might drop my score a little bit, but I think that those questions will be answered later. I just want to say too, like, I just think it's brilliant that Kevin Costner has directed this, written this along with John Baird and some others, but has also acted in it as well. So well done to Kevin Costner.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5. I think it's always difficult to write a part 1 and a part 2 of a series. I think it's easier with a franchise because you can kind of finish off a film. But I always think when you're doing chapters like this, like I said before with Lord of the Rings, it's always very hard to do 1 and 2. 2's always difficult because the second one is kind of picking up where the first one left off, so you're not doing the character intros, but then you can't finish it off either. But number 1s are always difficult because you're always going to have people walking out of the cinema going, oh, the story didn't really come to a conclusion. But it can't because it's got to continue. So, look, I take my hat off to Kevin Costner. He had the idea for this movie 30 years ago, and he's been working on it for 30 years. So, I take my hat off to him. There's a lot of people out there being negative and saying that he's only making this off the back of Yellowstone because of the popularity of Westerns, but people seem to forget this is the man that gave us Dances with Wolves. He's been obsessed by the West and Westerns for a lot longer than just Yellowstone. So, I am going to give Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1, 4 out of 5. Lee gave it 4.5 out of 5. It is only showing in select cinemas, so make sure you check your local cinema guide and go along and check out this brilliant film.